using people who can see auras to cross-reference where a person is in their process. Now, as we have covered in previous Destiny interviews, the aura is the color given off by and through the mind as the systems, as the mind consciousness system. So when you are seeing colors, you are actually seeing the colors of the system as mind consciousness, as it moves, as the being is participating as the mind consciousness system. Therefore, colors seen are basically an indication of what the being is thinking about, how they are, where they are within their participation in their own system design. So as I mentioned previously, we have done interviews about what the aura is. So if one is, for example, using people who see auras, realize that that person is seeing the color of the mind consciousness system of that being. So that is not an effective way to be able to see even the totality of the being and where they are currently within their process. It is simply showing what the being is thinking about and what system within themselves they are busy participating in. So to use that as an indication of where the being is not effective. If one looks at, for example, the points that a person is busy working with, like, say, for example, self-correction and self-forgiveness, here one will see this within the living application of the being. If one then tries to use the aura, which is the color of what the mind, as the mind consciousness system, is currently doing in that moment, if you are using that as a cross-reference point, all that you are seeing is how the mind is interpreting and experiencing itself at that moment that the being is busy experiencing themselves. So you are not seeing the totality of the being. You are not seeing the starting point of the system as the mind consciousness system of the being. You are not seeing where the system came from. So let's say, for example, the point of sex. Okay, let's say you are this person who can see an aura is looking at apparently somebody's aura, and they can see that the color of this person's aura is orange, which indicates that this person is currently very much trying to accentuate themselves sexually. All that you are now seeing is that if the color is a dark orange or a light orange or whatever, you can say, okay, this person is busy presenting themselves to get attention from people sexually. Let's say that 2 weeks later you look at the person again, and now that part of the aura which was orange is now a lighter orange. Now the person is interpreting that apparently this person is transcending or self-realizing themselves within their sexual experience. But this is you interpreting one aspect of how the mind is busy participating within the sex system, and you are not considering how the actual system functions, how the mind of the being functions, how the different layers of the being's mind functions in relation to, for example, the point of sex. So, you know, you could look at the aura and say, okay, I'm seeing the mind and I'm seeing the color of the systems as the mind consciousness system of the being, but that actually means nothing, because the tools that one would have to use to actually take the being through the self-corrective steps, such as self-forgiveness, self-corrective application, writing, identifying backchat thoughts, identifying the trigger points that the being has connected to between the sex system, and points within the person's environment which acts as triggers that trigger the sex system within the being. All of that is not taken into consideration. So looking at the colors is basically seeing a one-dimensional aspect of the mind consciousness system, and it is not taking into consideration who the being is and all the aspects involved. You know, if you take one point, for example, such as sex, then you have to go back and look at the person's history in relation to sex. you have to look at the design of themselves in relation to their parents. What is it that was carried through from the point of DNA? What did they observe within their parents? What did the secret mind and the backchat mind take in relation to what it observed others doing? How does the symbology work? How is the being's resonances functioning in relation to the mind consciousness system? Because now the being has certain symbolic trigger points within the being's world which will trigger the sex system. And you know, all of those unseen points we take on specifically with writing, with introspection, going back, looking at one's life, looking at where as far back can you remember yourself reacting to symbols in your world, pictures, smells, colors, touch, to get to the point of how did you design, for example, the sex system. So each person, what we do, for example, in the desteni process, is each person goes and looks at their design of the mind. This we do within specific parts of the courses. Each part of the course goes into teaching the person specific tools in identifying how the mind works and how the mind layers information and how it connects relationship points, which then creates how the mind is constructed. So this is the only way that one actually effectively can see your own progress even. You know, your own progress is seen in the living application of, okay, I identified the steps through writing. I identified the steps by going and looking at how did the mind connect all the relationship points to create me as who I am now, as the things that I do, like for example sex. Then you go and you apply self-forgiveness and you write out self-corrective statements. Here you are taking self-responsibility for what you have always allowed, and you are identifying. Next time that I'm in my pattern, for example, of getting triggered by a picture and then getting aroused and having thoughts come up, then what I do is the following. That is how self-corrective statements work. And then one puts that into practical living. In other words, you place yourself in your world and you see, where was my self-forgiveness and my self-corrective statements effective, and where has it not been effective? So this will be the most effective way for you to actually become effective within your world, is to walk the point yourself and to actually see, where am I not changing, where am I falling into old patterns, instead of relying on a person who can, for example, see a color. This is not actually saying to you that you are changing. This is not actually indicating to you where you still need to go and look again at your self-forgiveness statements and your self-corrective points to align yourself within your world to be more effective. So that is something to consider, is to always work with every point and actually look at the point, write about it, find the relationship points, and do self-forgiveness effectively and walk the point of self-correction in real time, meaning observing yourself, observing your reactions, and that which comes up as the thoughts that still come up. Those will be the actual indications of, have I changed and where do I need to go and work more with my writings. Thank you.